Welcome back. So as you can see, I've got the new Viton oil seal there pressed into place in that back cover. So that one can stand higher temperatures, so that shouldn't leak or wear out too quickly. Alright, just to give you a summary of all the different things that I've done here. So first thing was I've gone and put in this pump here, which is a scavenger pump. So that's fed directly from here, from the redrive, and so that goes into the pump, and then from there, now it comes out of here. There's a little right angle there, or actually 180-degree turn, and it comes back down here, and now it comes into this new oil cooler here. And so you can see I've put some foam insulation around the sides here. It's going to fit sort of snugly into the cowling outlet there. And then from that side there, it comes out here, out this fitting, and then runs back around here and down there, and then back into the sump. So hopefully, well, I've got that new oil seal in the redrive as well, and everything back together there. And I tested it once already, so before I put the oil cooler in. I didn't have any leaks, but I didn't actually fly it. I just tested it on the ground. So we'll have to see how it all works, and hopefully now I get some extra cooling out of there as well. So we'll see. And if not, I can potentially use this still where it is, but plumb it into the main feed of the oil loop. But for right now, there's probably enough oil running through here to make a difference, but we'll have to see with testing. So I set up my little thermometer setup again here with measuring both sides of that intercooler, and just did a ground run, and just wanted to see, if any temperature drop was happening across there, just, doing a ground run from the air being pulled through there. And I actually saw between 5 and 7 degree drop across there. Obviously this is after I've run it there and it's sort of cooling down. So it seems to be working okay. Alright, something else I've been working on while it's been raining here is just creating these little panels here, which close out the wing root there. And not really because there's any reason to close out the wing root, other than just trying to seal the air into the engine compartment, because there's an opening here behind this area which basically runs into the baggage compartment down there. And without this in there, the air can go in there, and I'm trying to get this air to all flow out the back and not have any other places to escape other than around this area here, and then out through the cowling vent. Of course, some will come out around the exhaust there, but there's nothing really I can do with that right now, unless I fabricated a shroud around there, but I don't really want to do that. So but anyway, this will help, and I've done it on the other side as well. So see if that gets me some tighter airflow around the engine compartment. Alright, so fair warning for those of you who get motion sick or motion sickness. You may not want to watch this flight because it was pretty windy out and pretty gusty, and subsequently it was pretty bumpy, and I was getting tossed around a lot. But at some point I need to see how the aircraft handles in these sorts of conditions, and I was ready to abort if I was feeling like I was sort of not able to control the crosswind here on the takeoff, because it was direct crosswind here, about 10 knots. The goal here was to test out the new oil cooler and the scavenger pump, and obviously the new oil seals on the redrive, just to see whether everything was resolved in terms of oil leak. And a couple of other things I've done too. I've gone and back on the static port underneath the fuselage there, and I've just sort of increased the fence a little bit there to capture more air and increase the pressure under there, and we'll see how that plays out. And I've also got a telltale on the right trailing edge there, or outboard edge of the foreplane. You can kind of see it whipping around there. I wanted to see what the airflow was doing coming off the tip of that, and how it was interacting with the main wing. And you can see more of that here shortly, what's going on with that. And on the takeoff roll, I actually had the prop governor set back much more than I would normally have had, so I ended up taking off with the engine about 3100 RPM, but fortunately the Audi engine has gobs of torque, so It wasn't really that much difference, probably not quite the same performance in terms of climb out, and then ultimately I was putting the prop back anyway after that. But overall, the cooling seemed to be working pretty good with that new oil cooler. It was definitely helping from what I had before. I just didn't really have any worries there with the cooling. I'll probably try and do another video that just goes through the logs from this flight. I just didn't have time to do it, and this video would ended up being super long again, and I know you guys are getting tired of watching a 30 plus minute long video, so once I put an explanation in there of how the engine was performing, it ends up being at least that and more. So maybe I'll do another video in another day or two and just go over the data from the engine log so you can see that. But anyway, interesting to see that telltale there out on the foreplane. It's definitely showing the vortice coming off the leading or the tip there and spinning around quite a lot. And I'm pretty sure given how that's flowing back, and the reason I made it as long as what it was, I wanted to see where that flow was impacting the main wing, and obviously because it's whipping around so much, it's hard to tell exactly where it is, but I'm pretty sure that those telltales out there that are on the main wing are lifting up and down in response to the vortices coming off that foreplane. And you'll also see on the right hand side of the aircraft on the end numbers there, I put a bunch of closely laid out telltales there to see if there was potentially a stagnation point somewhere there where I could put the static port. But because of the curved nature of the fuselage and the laminar kind of flow there, all those telltales are just going backwards just the way you'd expect there. So there's no decent point in that whole area there behind the door where you could put a static port. It would just be basically pulling a low pressure there constantly. It's not like a regular low wing aircraft where there's a stagnation point just above the wing towards the trailing edge. So I don't have that luxury. So anyway, I'm just going to keep experimenting with this with the static port the way I have it with that sort of fence up behind it, just increasing the size of the fence to capture a bit more air pressure, and they actually made a difference. I'm pretty sure now, looking at the data there from the Garmin, that I'm seeing more accurate numbers because I'm not always flying with a headwind at this point. And I think the altimeter is more accurate as well. And there you can see those telltales on the end number.
Off tower, number 4657, visual 17.
Number 4657, bow, off the tower, making 11. Wind 280 at 10, altimeter 2998, report 3 miles driven.
Report 3 miles, number 4667.
Raptor, two thing about the safe position.
Just about 1.5 miles east of the field at 2,300. It's pretty bumpy up here.
Two thing about the weather.
And with respect to the turbulence, a couple of Cessna 172s had been up before me, and they came back with their tails between their legs.
4657, multiple reports of strong wind coming from the west, approximately 30 knots. Also got like a moderate turbulence, all reported by Skyhawk.
And then number 4667 copies. We're showing a 20 knot wind from the west, currently here at 1,500 feet.
4657, roger. Any chop? .4657, say flight conditions upon arrival, please.
We'll say.
Yeah, so as I was saying, a couple of Skyhawks were up and they came back in and they requested to land on 2-2 because of how bumpy it was. So I was expecting to have this be a short flight as well because of that. And ultimately ended up climbing up to about 3,400, which was indicated. GPS wasn't showing too much off that. I think it was showing 3,200. So fairly close in terms of things. So the static port, I think I'm going to just increase that fence a little bit more, just to capture a little bit more air in there, increase the pressure, which will give me a lower reading on the altimeter and also a lower reading on the airspeeds. And I think that potentially that's going to be good enough for what I can do. Obviously, I can put a pitot tube out the nose, one of those ones where the holes are on either side of that, but I'm just worried, people walking into that and it getting broken and all that sort of stuff, so that's not really a choice. And then I've seen that the Pipers have like a blade style pitot tube as well that mounts below that potentially I could use, but I think those need to be dialed in as well, because they still have just a single hole and not like a hole on either side. So I'm just going to go with what I have right now, because it's getting pretty close to accurate, for what I need to do. So I'll just stick with that. And with respect to the redrive, I didn't have any indications coming up of low oil or anything like that, so I was feeling pretty confident that I'd fixed the oil leak.
Remember, 2 Tango Delta, fire.
Sorry, it is on time.
Number 2 Tango Delta, he landed at 10:51 local time and going to depart at 11:55 local time.
Copy that. We'll stop here a little bit longer, and then probably going to come in and try 2-2 again, the same as the other guys. I had a look down there when I went by, and I don't see there's only a little bit of water there at the intersection where it crosses the other runway. I think it'll be fine.
All right, number 2 Tango Delta, just be advised, it's going to be a quarter inch at Foxtrot, use caution.
All right, I'll let you know when I'm ready to come back here to 2 Tango Delta. Thanks.
So there I was actually checking on whether the Delta flight had arrived already, and I could have just looked in the ramp to see it, because I didn't want to come in and land when that thing was on short final or something. Anyway, it was already on the ground, and then they were advising me if I wanted to land on 2-2, there was water across the runway there where it intersects with 1-3, about a quarter inch. So they were just advising me that could be an issue with controllability coming across that, but I had a look at it and it didn't look like much, and it was only in one area of the runway anyway, and I could have just avoided it. So given the gusty nature of the winds, and I knew the winds were slowly picking up as well, but I wanted to get a little bit more time in the aircraft to make sure that I've given that engine enough time to sprout any leaks if there's any there. But ultimately I didn't want to wait too long, because I knew the winds were going to get stronger, so basically planned just to make a nice big left traffic pattern there and for the base for 2-2. And as you can see, I'm getting bumped around quite a lot there, and I don't know whether there's anything sort of inherently unstable about the aircraft, but it wants to definitely come wings level after it hits a bump. I'm not having to do much to it at all with respect to just getting it to come wings level again, but definitely hitting bumps you get rolled around for sure. And in terms of just the ride, it's not like you're getting bumped in and out of your seat, it's more just a rolling thing that you get. And there you can see that telltale there, so the vortices coming off that off the tip of the foreplane there are spinning anti-clockwise, as you can see there, and it's really apparent there because the camera is right in line with it. So all that spiral coming there, that's what I think is affecting those telltales on top of the main wing. And I don't think there's nothing I can do about it here, and I don't really think it has that much of an effect on anything, but potentially we can make some changes later on to try and minimize the impact of those vortices coming off of there. And with respect to engine temperatures, the oil temp didn't go over 240 and actually got it to come back down to 220s after a little while. So I'm pretty happy with that, and part of that's got to do with the new oil cooler that's cooling the oil coming out of the redrive, but I think just closing off those areas in the cowling there where air was potentially sort of coming in and out where I didn't really want it to be has also made it an improvement as well. But the fact is, I'm quite happy to run the engine up to 250 during the climb, and only going to 240 today, and I've pretty much had it most of the time in the climb at about 75% power, means that I'm actually sort of closing in on being able to run almost full power for the climb the whole way. At least, it won't be too much more, that I could take it up to 80% for the climb and know that I'm probably just going to keep it under 250. So that's good news. I think I've got a ship now that I can do testing with. It's not leaking oil. because when I got back on the ground, I didn't have any, you know, leaks out of the redrive or anything. There was a couple of the fittings that I needed to tighten up a little bit more. Just had a few drops out of them, but other than that, no oil leaks.
Right off the tower, Raptor 342 Tango Delta is on a pretty wide left base for runway 22 Tango Delta.
For 2 Tango Delta, Madam Site, runway 22, clear land, use caution, quarter inch staying water, midfield.
Runway 22, clear to land, 2 Tango Delta.
C71 dog stop.
All right, so this is the point where you start to sort of think about, you know, being very precise on your landing, because when it's all gusty and stuff like this, you know, you can bend up your airplane if you're not careful. So I was focusing on making a nice long straight in approach there on final so I could get all nice and stabilized.
Rescue 71 South Alpha Tower. Go ahead Tower, Rescue 71. 71D Raptor is coming inbound, runway 22. Roger, inbound, runway 22, Rescue 71.
So I don't know why they called out the rescue there, but anyway, I never asked for them, but they were probably worried that I was going to have trouble landing or something like that and potentially make a big mess on the runway. So it was my job to prove them otherwise. Anyway, so they called out the rescue there, or at least had them on standby. Yeah, so it's nice to know people are looking out for you. But I had no intention of messing up the aircraft here.
500.
So as you can see, I was getting tossed around quite a lot there. But I knew full well that once I got down right above the pavement that I would have the shelter of the trees there that are on the right hand side, so I just need to keep everything stable until I can you know, get down there to touchdown.
1 mile final runway 22.
And as you can see, I'm coming in about sort of 5 to 10 knots faster than I normally do, just because of the wind gusts, and landing on the shorter runway here that's 5,500 feet. So I was planning on doing a bit of a carrier landing here if I needed to, and not allowing it to float or get too slow. So that's kind of, you can see what I end up doing here. But yeah, right here on short final, I'm getting bumped around quite a lot. But you know, ship's sort of handling it okay. And you know, I was just focusing on getting it down low here and then just planning it. And it ended up being a little bit right of center line, but I'm okay with that. Overall, it was a fairly decent landing, so not too worried about that, which was good.
That was fun.
For 2 Tango Delta, make 180 backtrack to take a Foxtrot, contact ground when off.
I'll make a 180 backtrack to Foxtrot and contact ground when clear of the runway 2 Tango Delta.
Okay, so to summarize, after I got back there, pulled the cowling off and had a look, there wasn't any oil leaks coming out of the redrive. As I said, just a couple of fittings there that I just tightened up a little bit more, because there was a bunch of different fittings that were in there to get all this plumbing to work in the way it was, as you saw back earlier in this video. And the airspeed seems to be reading a bit better along with the altimeter, so that's good. That telltale was, you know, telling me what I wanted to know about the air coming off of the foreplane there, so that's all positive there. And other than that, it was a successful flight. Oh, and the cooling is definitely better as well. So you know, as I said, I'll probably do another video and you know, show you guys how the engine logs were for this particular run. But I think I've got an aircraft now where I can comfortably keep the temperatures under 240 if I want, and then go to 250 if I really want to climb a bit harder.
Approaching runway 13.
So overall, pretty happy with that flight. And
Entered runway 13. 3,100 feet remaining.
thank you, Siri. Happy with that flight, and thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Cheers.